Welcome back to the Morgan Ortagus Show. It's on Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125, audio only. You can also watch a video version of this on my social media on YouTube at Morgan Ortagus, MorganOrtagus. Hopefully you caught that. I have with me, of course, someone everybody knows, Senator Lindsey Graham from the state of South Carolina, senior senator there. But actually, we are recording this. We're not in South Carolina. We're not in Washington, D.C. No. Even. We're in Detroit, Michigan. We're here today. We're going to do an event with Mike Rogers. We're talking about American national security and foreign policy. Right. Let me just get your take on what's going on in Michigan. This is a key and crucial state for both presidential campaigns, also for the Senate race here. What do you think happens politically in Michigan?
Well, I think Mike would be the best candidate we could have as a Republican. He's a former FBI agent. He's solid as a rock on national security, things that you and I care most about. This Polaris organization of yours is doing a lot of really great work. We need people in the Senate on day one who get the world, understand that Israel's our friend and Iran's our enemy, and the Iranians have literally gotten away with murder. I think Mike will hit the ground running on what will it take to make America safe. In terms of Michigan itself, there are a lot of people living, hourly workers here, like in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Inflation is high, crime is not where it should be. I think people are looking for a change, and I think Trump can win Michigan, I really do. You know, electric cars are fine, you just don't want to destroy, you know, the car manufacturing business in the name of climate change.
Right.
And I think that's a big issue here. So I just think people in Michigan, like the rest of the country, believe we're going in the wrong direction. And the folks in Michigan, you're right, we are going in the wrong direction. The wrong answer would be keeping the same people in charge.
You know, it's interesting because when you think about auto manufacturing in the United States, the first state you think of is, of course, Michigan. But actually, your home state of South Carolina, y'all are big auto manufacturers. Now, tell us what's going on there.
Well, we got BMW, we got Volvo, we got a big footprint. We make more tires than any place in the country, but we have a very big auto footprint. You know, one of the issues that I think is affecting Michigan and South Carolina is not just inflation, it's a broken border.
Right.
One of the people you'll have today is Chad Wolf. I mean, we know how to secure the border, we just choose not to do it. Donald Trump had the lowest illegal crossings when he left office in the last 40 years. Now we're at an all-time high every month because we changed policies. So I think in Michigan, people feel like this invasion of illegal immigrants makes us less safe. Yeah. It creates competition for jobs, and there's just an unease in America.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, too, because you've got all of the auto manufacturing issues in Michigan and South Carolina, but also politically, it feels like so many of the foreign policy decisions that President Biden and his team are making is because they're trying to win this state. Is that going to work?
Well, you know, you got to keep things very clear. I'd like to have a better life for the Palestinians, but Hamas is a terrorist group. It has to be destroyed. So if you really understand what's going on after October the 7th, Hamas is not about improving the life of the Palestinian people in Gaza. They're about destroying the state of Israel from the river to the sea.
Clearly, I mean, the State Department just said, I think it was yesterday or this week, the State Department said they had a big aid shipment going into Gaza and Hamas stole it. They stole all the food and aid for their people.
So they're religious Nazis. They're on a quest to destroy the Jewish people, and they'd come after us if they could. So I've been working with the administration for over a year now, trying to get Saudi Arabia and Israel to normalize. When you were in the Trump administration, we had 6 Arab governments recognize the state of Israel. Having a strong policy against Iran convinced the Arabs that Trump was the guy to do business with. And now the next big leap to the Abraham Accords, which you helped negotiate with Pompeo, is to have Saudi Arabia and Israel normalized. Well, a part of that process would be a better life for the Palestinians. Here's what I can say without equivocation. There is no better life for the Palestinians if Hamas is still there. If they survive politically and militarily, they will reject any efforts by Saudi Arabia to change the place for the better. So how you get rid of them is negotiable, but the fact that they got to go is non-negotiable.
Right.
To the Palestinian people, you will never enjoy a better future as long as this terrorist group exists.
Yeah, we had the Hamas just this week turning down yet another ceasefire proposal that would get the Israeli and American hostages back. Hamas turned that down, and then they literally stole their people's food and aid. The Hamas being for the Palestinian people is a freaking joke.
Yeah, so I know there's a large Arab American population here in Michigan, and here's what I would say. I'm a Republican, and I've been openly trying to help a Democratic president land a major political accomplishment. The normalization of Saudi Arabia, the keeper of the Holy Mosque in Mecca and Medina, with the Jewish state of Israel, and have a Palestinian component where you would replace Hamas and the corrupt PA with something new and better, and have security concerns of Israel met in this overall deal. So I think the best thing we could do is work with Biden, and I'm a proud Republican. I'm totally in for Trump. But President Trump gave us the foundation. You and Pompeo gave us the foundation, the Abraham Accords. Go to the next step. So if we could pull this off, where Saudi Arabia and Israel economically and diplomatically recognize each other and work together, it's a big blow to the Ayatollah. If the Arab-Israeli conflict ends, it leaves Iran out in the cold. And the component for the Palestinians would be a better life with Saudi Arabia and the UAE helping. Yeah. So that's what I would like to do before soon, not later. So to the folks in Michigan, I want to help President Biden change the Mideast for the better, but the policies of President Trump were strong, clear, and unequivocal, domestically and internationally. We missed those policies, particularly on the border.
So some people in Israel will say, yes, they'd like a recognition deal with Saudi Arabia, but they don't want the deal if it comes at the expense of the Israeli military going into Rafah and destroying Hamas, so that it's no longer a military threat. How do you answer that?
Well, there is no end to the conflict with Hamas still standing. So how you destroy the 4 battalions in Rafah is subject to debate, but it's non-negotiable. They have to go. And Hamas militarily and politically have to be vanquished. That's non-negotiable. How you do that is subject to negotiation. And to Saudi Arabia and Israel, as to you talk about the future of the Palestinians, Israelis universally reject a unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. You'd be rewarding Hamas for the attack if out of this came instantly a Palestinian state. The Israeli position has been direct negotiations without conditions. Whether or not they get there, I don't know, but a discussion between Saudi Arabia and Israel about this would, I think, be beneficial, but it has to be on terms that Israel feels comfortable with. So I'm hoping in the next couple of months or less, we'll have a breakthrough here.
Now, one of the things that's really great about a radio show and a show on YouTube is that you can spend time breaking down a complicated subject that's hard to talk about on regular TV. You're the perfect guest to do this, and so I want you to carefully walk our audience through. We'd like to understand your perspective of, there's a lot of news this week on the ICC,
right,
which is the International Criminal Court.
Right.
And there are lots of press reports that the ICC may indict senior Israeli officials for war crimes in Gaza. Explain to our audience, first of all, what the ICC is, why all of this matters. Do you think it's going to happen? If you could just break that down for us, because I think it's really important and we need to understand the nuance.
Sure. So post-World War II, we created the International Criminal Court, of which we're not a member of, because we're suspicious of the International Criminal Court for a good reason. But there is a role for the ICC in ungoverned spaces in Africa where warlords roam and there is no infrastructure in place in the Congo and other places to bring justice. Failed states like Russia, where the rule of law is a joke. If you oppose Putin, you fall out of a window. So the ICC has a lane, I think, of trying to bring a rule of law, justice to ungoverned spaces and rogue states. Its charter was for that. If they believe, the ICC believes, it has worldwide jurisdiction over non-members, we're not a member, Israel's not a member, then that gets to be incredibly problematic. The one thing I would tell your audience, the most robust judiciary on the planet is the Israeli court system. They literally, without a case being brought to the court, can reach out and strike down an enactment of the Knesset if they find it to be unreasonable. So they have tremendous power. Some would say too much. But they're very independent. The prime minister himself is facing charges. So the idea that Israel doesn't have an independent judiciary that can police the state of Israel, I reject that.
And that's essentially what the ICC was set up for places like Darfur, Sudan,
Exactly.
or lawless, ungoverned places where you couldn't hold
100%.
people accountable. And, you know, our big
Russia.
problem in Russia is great, and you could talk about what you did there. Our big problem in the Trump administration with the ICC, and why my boss, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, actually sanctioned them, is because they were trying to prosecute American service members for things that had happened in Afghanistan, which we have our own military courts. We have our own independent judiciary to prosecute those things.
So I was a military lawyer for 30 years. I was a defense counsel, a prosecutor, and a military judge. We have a very independent judiciary in the military. So we're on a collision course, potentially. I hope not. But the ICC's job is not to roam the globe and look at conflict and decide who's the bad guy and who's the good guy and who to prosecute and who's not. They're to fill in voids and vacuums. So complementarity is a concept in the Rome Statute, and it says the ICC is complementary, not a replacement for mature legal systems. So when they suggested they may prosecute the ICC American service members, your boss, through President Trump, sanctioned them because we do have an independent judiciary. The ICC's job is not to take the place of the American legal system. There is no more independent judiciary in the entire planet than Israel. So I think it would be an affront to those who are in the judicial system for the ICC to say we know better. If you have concerns about what Israel's deal has done, through complementarity, share those concerns. But it will not be up to the ICC how to act, because Israel is an independent democracy with a robust judiciary. And if you try to supplant that and make the ICC the uber prosecutor of the world, you're going to run into serious difficulties in the United States, because we would see that we would be next.
Yeah, and I think a bipartisan group of senators
Wide
and
and deep
administration.
belief that the ICC has a role, but this is not the role. If there is any place I've ever been where the judiciary is empowered and independent, it is Israel.
I want to talk to you. You're very good friends with President Trump. You and he are golf buddies, from what we all read in the news.
He's very good too. That's not a joke. He's a very good golfer.
And one of the things that we know, obviously, is that he's been taken off the campaign trail.
Right.
And he has to focus on this criminal case in New York. And that's taking up a lot of oxygen, a lot of the air out of the room. But you actually know his foreign policy very well. You've debated him. And I think you would say that he actually listens to all sides in the room. You know, I'm curious how you think President Trump, if he's elected again in November and inaugurated in January, what does the Middle East look like under a President Trump second term?
Order rather than chaos. He's going to get elected. I really believe that. Then he'll have a team like he had in the past that will get our border under control. He'll tell Mexico, you need to work with us, not against us. If you don't, you're going to face tariffs. He will finish the wall, and we'll regain control of our border. He'll engage everybody in the Mideast, saying, let's work together. Yeah. He stood up to Iran. He killed Soleimani. You were there. So I think his presence on the world stage calms things down. And let me tell you about President Trump. He is always looking for leverage. Foreign policy and business sort of commingle here.
Right.
Ukraine. A lot of people on our side, on the Republican side, think Ukraine's not in our interest. Well, I can tell you this. If you think Putin's going to stop on his own, you're naive. He will only stop taking other people's stuff until somebody makes him. And the Ukrainians say we're going to fight for our sovereignty. We're not going to become puppets of Russia. It is in our interest to stop him in Ukraine, because we're not using any of our soldiers in the fight. If he goes to a NATO nation, there'll be a war between the United States, NATO, and Russia. That could really happen. So helping Ukraine is in our national interest. keep our soldiers out of the fight, and keep Putin bottled up. When we pulled out of Afghanistan, it sent a signal to Putin and everybody else we're weak. This is her line, not mine. It's the best summary of the Biden administration I've seen. 2021, the Taliban take over Afghanistan. 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. 2023, Hamas attacks Israel. 2024, Iran attacks Israel. 25, 26, 27, 28, what does that look like?
Heaven help us.
So that was the best summary.
Thank you.
Every year there's been a major debacle, and the worst is yet to come. If we keep sending mixed signals to Iran and to China, and we don't get Israel in a spot where it can survive, if we don't have Israel's back, this is going to get far worse.
Well, I could not agree more.
But back to Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what, there would be no aid package to Ukraine without Trump. And here's what he did. He said in the Iraq war, well, we should take their oil. He didn't mean literally take their oil. We should have had the oil in Iraq as collateral for the money we were giving to the Iraqis. Make some of it alone, get paid back when you can. So what did he say? He said, you know, instead of just giving all this money to Ukraine, they're sitting on a lot of critical minerals. Let's make it alone. And down the road, if they can afford to pay us back, they should. I think that gives you leverage. It sets a new way of doing business. The American taxpayer appreciates that attitude. Ukraine accepted those conditions. And if it had not been for President Trump, I don't think it would have passed the House.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, we've gone around the world. We didn't get to China yet, but we'll do that in the next interview.
It's not going away, so we'll be back.
Is everybody still going to lindseygraham.com?
lindseygraham.com. $5 goes a long way.
Well, thank you again, the senior senator from South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham. Thank you for being back on the Morgan Ortagus Show.